I mean,
Right.
it's become, and I think, for me, that's what I think has happened. I think that once they got in Afghanistan, and once again, I'm different about this because as soon as I saw the buildings drop, the first thing out of my head was, this is going to be a horrible war to fight. Because how do you win against terrorism?
Right.
And how do you find this guy? Because finding this guy I knew would be absolutely impossible. And so once they got into Afghanistan, couldn't get him out if he was ever there at all, I realized it became an FBI, CIA problem, which there's no news articles about that. You're never going to know how the CIA is going to take care
No,
of this.
exactly. And ideally, it would be a CIA problem.
Right.
But that's putting a huge responsibility on their shoulders. It becomes a point where it almost has to be a military operation.
Right.
Which is why it became a military operation in Afghanistan.
Right.
We had our chances to get bin Laden. You know, I mean, we trained a lot of the people who worked under bin Laden.
Well, yeah.
But once he's gone,
Right.
once you've gone in there with the military, and that has failed, and he's in
Right.
these other countries, it puts a huge responsibility on the back of the CIA to say,
Right.
go find him. You have to have it be military.
Right.
Okay, and that's difficult because obviously people don't just welcome the United States
Right.
into their country. So then it has to be a military offensive. Now the thing is, I think maybe you're going to say that's why we're in Iraq. Well, okay, but then where's the proof that he's in Iraq? Or
I don't
that
think he's in.
Iran,
or I don't think he's in Iraq. I don't think him and Saddam are best buddies. I think there's a far bigger connection between the two than a lot of people like Michael Moore would like to say. And I think their connection. I don't think he's in Iraq. I mean, he could very well be in Saudi Arabia. Are you saying? And here's a very interesting question we can get into about Saudi Arabia. Do you think that if we can prove? I mean, I first of all think that he was smart enough to realize that he put the guys on the plane from Saudi Arabia so that he can cause a lot of problems with Saudi Arabia to be a great distraction. But if he's in Saudi Arabia, do we take military troops to Saudi Arabia?
Well, then you're dealing with the needle in the haystack
Yeah.
again. Then do you take troops into every country in the
Right.
world until you eventually find them? You can't do that.
Right.
So
We took it into the one country that we knew that there was a direct link and a connection to, and after
Right.
that it became a CIA problem.
Right.
Now we have Iraq over here, who I think sooner or later was going to become that distraction against our hunt to Al-Qaeda, whether we liked it or not, because I think the country was going to implode. And it was our responsibility because we put the guy in power in the 60s. We were his best buddies in the 80s. We're morally responsible to take care of this job as far as I'm concerned. So the question now, how do you win the war on terrorism?
Oh God.
Exactly. I mean, because this is the question, and maybe this is why I've looked at this so different than most people. Because when the planes hit and they said it was a terrorist act, I was praying it was a country. Because then we could go in the country, invade the country, take out the thing, put in the government, it's all good. How do you win
Well,
terrorism?
let me give you the cynical answer, and this
Yeah.
is why I wouldn't be a politician. You
Yeah,
can't.
You can't.
It's not a war you can win, which is why that's another thing that angers me, I guess. As a liberal,
Yes.
it angers me to see him go on television and say, you know, that we are winning the war on terror.
Yeah.
That this is a process, but we're winning it.
Yeah.
No, we're not, because you can't.
Right.
There will always be somebody somewhere
Right.
who's going to be able to head this up, and there's going to be somebody who's got, you know, issues with us.
Right.
Oh, it's always going to be the case. We've got issues with other countries have issues with us.
My problem with this is I don't think I like the word terrorism. I don't like the word terrorism because it's too broad, it's too general. We are dealing with Muslim fascists. And it's nothing against the Muslim religion. But the people that are running this are neo-Muslim extreme fascists. And this
Right.
is a sense, I feel much better at night when I realize we're going to war against fascism. I mean, these guys are, and this is what kind of cracks me up, and I'm not accusing you of this, but a lot of the liberals are so worried about George W. Bush leading us into a fascist state, they're ignoring the very Orwellistic fascist group that we're fighting against. I mean, if you take 1984 and you hand it over to bin Laden in North Korea and these guys, they've perfected it. You know, they're already there. You know, that's who we're actually at war with here. And I think maybe that's what we need to change our mindset on. We need to take the word terrorism out. Because terrorism almost gives something a pseudo-rebellious thing. It's like, you know, oh, well, we were technically terrorists when we took on the, yeah, but we didn't bury homosexuals alive. We didn't deprive women of their rights. We didn't do the horrific things that these people do. You know, this isn't, and I don't think this is an average Muslim thing. I think your average Muslim Middle Easterner is just like you and I. They want to be left the hell alone. They don't want these guys down their backs. If we can help them, great. They probably don't trust us that much. That's fine. I wouldn't expect them to. So what's the solution? You're president of the United States. You're 4 years in this conflict. I'm assuming you haven't invaded Iraq, correct?
I wouldn't.
Okay, you haven't invaded Iraq. Have you found Saddam? Do you think if you hadn't invaded Iraq, have you found Osama bin Laden by now?
No.
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 All right, so you're occupied Afghanistan. There's been basically no movement at all in the war. How do you think the public's responding to you right now?
Well, okay. Now, the war is me going to Afghanistan.
Right.
Okay, because we know that Al-Qaeda the Taliban was
Okay.
behind the initial attack. So we strike them back.
Right.
Okay? We go to Afghanistan, we look for Osama bin Laden.
Right.
We can't find him.
Right.
Because he's God knows where.
Right.
Now, how is that any different than what's going on right now?
Right. Okay.
That's-
But what are you doing about Iraq? Have you left Iraq completely alone? Are we not worrying about weapons inspections? I mean, there's a no-fly zone. I mean, here's the greatest myth everybody always says about Iraq, is that we've just went in and attacked this country. We've been attacking this country for 12 years because they've been firing on our no-fly zone for 12 years. So there is an active, I mean, as the President of the United States, Iraq is obviously active on your mind. What are you doing about it other than invading it? What are you doing to counteract the inevitability of this country falling apart and becoming a haven for terrorists and people that you hate?
Well, okay, but we're getting back to the basic argument here,
Right.
which is why aren't other countries in that area going to become that haven
Right.
for terrorist activity? If we got Saddam Hussein out of power, and I think that's great,
Right.
okay? If
Right.
it had been sold that way from the start, that would have been fine with
We
me.
should have done 12 years ago,
Sure.
as far as I'm concerned.
He's out of power. I'm not sitting here saying we should have left him in power.
No, I agree.
You know, he needed to be out. I'm glad he's out of power. I'm glad he's captured.
Yes.
And I think Iraq will probably be better off for it.
Right.
It's just that that's not the way it was sold.
Right.
But what is stopping other countries in that area from becoming the same thing?
But what other countries do we have a military presence in, backed by the UN to protect, that we would have this problem with? That is the difference. I mean, in Iraq, because he was dumb enough to go invade Kuwait 12 years ago, gave us the perfect out to create this sort of pseudo babysitting job, which we've been doing for the last 12 years. So I agree with you. There's other countries. There's Syria. There's Iran. There's all these other countries. Iraq's kind of like the backwoods cousin there. There's the bully segment, or the bully idea isn't too far off. I'll fully admit that part of the reason we're in there is it's easier to take them out than it is to take out Iran or take out North Korea. I mean, I'm not exactly feeling that bad about it, but there's no other country that we have our footing in already into some sort of a military presence to take care of that problem. I think that's where the difference is. And I also do believe, to some degree, if we do it right, there is the whole thing about all the cards falling down around it. Iran is on the verge, if we're very lucky and we play our cards right, of becoming a democracy. You have Iraq and Iran as a democracy. Syria is already far behind. We have Lebanon already kicking everybody out of Syria and trying to establish something. We've got Gaddafi, who has pretty much handed over his weapons of mass destruction, not to the UN, but to the British and to America for one reason and one reason only, is because Gaddafi's always been very sensible and realized that we took out Saddam, we'll be back for him. And we've also discovered about at least 2 or 3 weapon trafficking procedures that have been going on between North Korea and these other countries because of this war. So, once again, one final question, not picking on you.
Yeah.
What would you have done about Iraq to maintain, one, as you both agree that we probably would be a goal, as President Clinton stated was a goal, what would you have done to get rid of Saddam Hussein without having to go into war there and establishing Iraq into some sort of democracy? Because we have to admit that we had some sort of responsibility to do that. What would you have done?
But this is why I'm not president, so I don't have to answer questions like
it's not
this.
an easy
It's
job,
not
is
an-
it?
No, it's
Yeah.
not an easy question to answer.
Right.
And for all the stuff that I talk about George Bush,
Yeah.
I've never claimed that I wanted his job.
Yeah.
I've just claimed that I'm smarter than he is.
That's right.
And I probably would have surrounded myself with smarter people
Smarter
than he
people.
did. But those are the people who would
Right.
I would have to have strategic people to answer those
Right.
questions. I don't know.
I don't know.
I really don't know.
See, and that's probably where I fall. I don't agree with everything Bush did. I didn't like the boom, boom, scare, scare. I was cringing the whole time he did it because I knew it was going to bite him in the end. But I knew at the end of the day, this was a problem that had to be solved. And guess what? In this country, we don't always do things the ideal, perfect way to get it done. And I didn't care if we did it the ideal, perfect way. It had to get done. I'm hoping we will stay the course, be strong enough, not chicken out at the end and Howard Dean ourselves out of this country
Yeah.
and leave these people to rot. But at the end of the day, you know what? This is going to take a while. It's not going to take 5 years. And this is the other thing Bush and them and everybody else stopped saying. It's going to take 20 years. It's going to take a while to establish this country.
Yeah.
But it's worthwhile if we can set up a democracy in the Middle East. Call me an optimist. Yay. I don't know. Anyways, Ryan, you're a great president.
Hey.
I might vote for you
I would.
someday.
I would.